Energy uncertainty. Financial tech is faltering. Failure to adapt to emerging tech is hampered. Financial trading and investments on 24. Financial services appeal. Support technological development. After supply innovation, develop financial targets. Products, sci-tech, financial services become essential to financial development. Innovation become a criterion of digitalization. Change structures will need to significantly impact international systems. Industry has identified practical adapting. Personnel working hard technique. Continuous innovation need for financial development. Also for stable economic, social development. Innovation wants to promote inclusion, integrates electronic information and emerging technologies. Uncertainty over patent eligibility kills fintech innovation. The plan solves limits 20 average ideas create high-barrier entry for fintech judiciary. Not clearly defined fintech as business methods of manipulation injects uncertainty that innovation qualifies patent eligible or rules of unpredictability. The test continues to evolve for granted depending upon determination. I know when I see uncertainty create left development to lower courts issue are consistent. Applications leave hope recover. Positive forward for patent holders to delay matters eligibility deteriorations. But circuit has limited. I clarified it does not make claims for patent eligible leaving fintech innovators allows limiting effects and for the innovators to innovate and disclose exclusivity motivates to undertake the cost of R&D when limited. Most more likely to use trade secrets. Depriving disclosure analysis deterred release of information from fintech individual where due to risk impacts will be invalidated and unfriendly infringement movement will push fintech companies away to deprive the most important interventions. Proposal burns eligibility makes it flexible. Fintech requires breadth and flexibility. But firms that are small have one product that results in low cost companies in a higher situation of companies could be having advantages with seed protections. Benefits to capacity will be likely to invest in R&D encouraging innovation take advantage take risk in future warranty and investment standards future investments problematic and digital age code algorithms change nature of innovation frequency of knowledge could be a vesting period that precludes the most significant innovation flexible enough to unimagine digital innovations extraction interpret exceptions exist in nature and removing I know when I see a standard accepts any required external environment with the world. Water scarcity is accelerating fintech's key to solve megacities, food and energy security shortages, development of green bonds, Issac 24 productivity, improving measure effectively new waters, resources, agriculture, industry, urbanization, panel distribution, effective use of the demand, grows by the day, supply under double pressure from climate change, seriously growing, enhances productivity, linked to basic environmental diversity, agriculture, output, economic growth, rural communities, direct impact on ecological balance, energy security, ensuring security, achievable sustainable development will depend on improving water productivity, fintech driving most significant changes in the financial system, incorporating cutting-edge technologies, big data, improve supply of traditional services, fuel, financial innovations, significant impact on water productivity, create solutions by offering crowdfunding, financing, online investment platforms, create channels for water resources, reduce investment threshold, financial support, more accessible, place one, risk management for using AI, accurate assessment, and insurance provides openness and efficiency of water transactions through green bonds, sustainable development towards conservation process, fintech makes sustainability easier. Water shortages are escalating at night, wars that go nuclear. We have 23 by 2025, there's over on a water stress in places running in the future. 1,298 conflicts over water has been recorded. Water times practices increase likelihood in the near future. Asia, Middle East, and Africa vulnerable and have story of hostilities, biggest factor in India, Pakistan, depending on the Himalayan engaged located in disputed Kashmir with shortages, construction of dams, tensions, lack of cooperating water crisis, exacerbate nuclear war, tricking around have regulations and agreement. States security water security will not only determine security of our existence. Food security causes nuclear war, World War II, and Ukraine proof. Group 23, food security. Scarcity, armed primary drivers into the amount of conflicts, World War II, Soviet and Ukraine food bowl is one of the main terms. It main aims hunger, civil into government, daily civil wars, and VIP tsunamis, shortfall in grain exports, lead to revolutions in Arab countries, food conflicts range from rise to nuclear war, link between food and wars and inexorable. Having food is the most underrated weapon of peace. All empirical evidence proves to share 21 mechanism. Empirical evidence based on 41 point security, data space calibration, where we're enable quantity dissimulation, food production, insecurity, immigration, lead to tension, conflict, food insecurity, contributes to social unrest, political instability, inequality, risk, society collapses, existential scenarios. Megacity collapses, existential COVID-19. Even a single megacity collapse represents significant existential risk to failure of human one without dominant consequences and send shockwaves through the entire global food system over short time period. Existential outcomes such as disease and wars are likely. Developments and impact filter encompass existential wars, pandemics, and terror. 122 development indicated attack and power had the impact of poverty and development benefits from future reducing vulnerability to catastrophic conflict and pandemics. Countries educated, participate in institutions, improves governance, navigate existential risk, intelligence, reduce risk of instability, poverty, spread disease, income, improves health, and make population resilient to pandemics. Poverty create causes existential instability, weaknesses, and gender terrorism and crime, unable to maintain law and order. Future to pandemics and inevitable extinction. Boy 21 GCRs affect systems through the entire planet. Failure to mitigate risk civilization and mitigation involves responding with ability, resilience, fatality, affects majority. DBs occurred again. The threats is nuclear war. AI magnified by threats increase risk increase because BWC violated only take one violent accident be catastrophic. Development enables rule of law while preventing readiness, collapse, and failed states. Extinction. Absence 16 threats include terrorism, pandemics, spread conflict and immigration from failed states, trapping and cycle property, growing corruption of military resources, funding conflicts after they occur, costly, ineffective, and critical security interests were bonded with development from Syria, ISIL to Ebola, Nigeria, fragility, chance of medical security, consideration, fiscal imperative, cause crises and states lose control because they canvas for groups that threaten the world. Ukraine, Yemen, demonstrate fragility makes it susceptible to intervention, causes critically psychological violence, having partners Tunisia, Thailand, Egypt, Mali, several more at risk, underscoring threat, more instability than any point, real loss of extinction. Breslau 21, culprit consequences from breakdown. Germany, Rwanda, Russia, and Turkey, Syria, and Iran, rural bloc, people center, insist on equal application of safeguard rights. Many problems, including warming, hunger, overnutrition, leads to extinction, refugees, and international security must be renewable to combating corruption, diseases, green bond, self-sustainable development, justice 21. Blue bonds fund sustainability. Green bond a subset of green bonds maintaining a healthy ocean is critical for all SDGs by expanding frameworks. Blue bonds fund more sustainable development bonds allocated in shipping infrastructure, fisheries, manufacturing, waste reduction, resilience, runoff, and sanitation institutions were important credibility issues and accommodate set transparent targets. Innovation in fintech is key to effective stations in international standard setting. Manual 21 focused on target school control the international payment West-led standards such as protecting the environment, safeguarding privacy of China is taking the sophistication and lead in sophistication scale. Yuan is centralized if Chinese tech making the following make it difficult for the West to enforce sanctions in around local environmental rights and new currencies create massive emissions issues considered thoughtfully speed of the essence. China already should be ideas to create global standards is falling behind reputations as best. Effective sanctions regime solves nuclear conflict and out the extension risks. Job for $20. Rules to travel and leadership worth keeping dollars role offers an antidote to military adventurism. Enormous good can be done with deficit spending to fund programs to create worldwide distress. Dollar offers an alternative to military action being caught with death sentence that makes sanctions powerful use against Korea. Similarly, with the runs of limited nuclear weapons contain adversaries without intervention bombing fund. Healthcare, education, and climate mitigation. Absent U.S. standard setting, it devolves to digital currency wars and collapses the dollar. Wall 20. China and the U.S. engaged into conflict. China's digital yuan opens up possibility. Evidenced by explicit goal of looking to BRI, China is losing pressures from decentralized crypto may serve as function and reserve assets to U.S. dollars, a hegemonic reserve currency. Even regional yuan is constrained the dollar race induces critical standard setting issues. Collapse of the dollar causes immediate lash out nuclear war. Trotsky in 14. Collapse of the dollar may come to World War III leads in demonstration leads to World War I, which will nuclear Russia. In alliance with China, when the dollar falls even just deteriorating, the tipping point will reach any nation not use the dollar to hit with sanctions even in that's war bombs. The dropping dollar crash wrecks the Middle East and Asia nuclear war. Polar 6. Crash of the dollar, Middle Eastern and Asian economies, depend on U.S. purchases to strengthen the dollar. Fair worse, expect violent uprisings tension lead to totalitarianism to cope with economic collapse, civil war, attack on states, nuclear weapons, famine will spill over into other countries, lead to global militarism. Patents are specifically good for finance. They must have evidence specific to business method patents and fintech. Fazio 05. Trading cases is ability to navigate complexity features, automated bid matching software that values interest rate swaps. New financial companies are harnessing electronic systems to create efficiency of business. Patenting new trading to protect innovation, uniqueness of business method patent innovation. The idea of the superior art technological form that implements code and hardware. The ISV state innovated finds efficient ways to update to trades. Rigorous defense of patents leading to healthy competition and incentives to continually innovate, creating liquidity and new instruments. Traders must update or die. ISVs put significant capital towards R&D. Electronic trading has reduced the cost of execution. New patents incentivize innovation, research at efficiency, volume, commodity, and futures. Trades greater flexibility. Electronic trading provided patent protections, coveted copyright protection encompass the expression but not the idea of competitive reverse is copyright cannot act and shield an injunction. The United States federal government should increase patent eligibility for financial technology business method patents.
We good for cross?
Yeah.
Cool. I want to start off with the normal means after maybe through Congress or the courts.
Probably Congress.
Congress? Okay, I want to talk about the first, or just like the advantage. Is the app key to financial tech development?
Yeah.
What happens if no app? What happens to fintech?
It doesn't adapt to like this
what does it do?
So water scarce. It doesn't adapt to things like water scarcity.
Okay, so then what else does fintech do?
Like other, I don't know.
Okay.
Stagnates?
No, yeah.
It just stagnates? Cool.
Like we're only making the claim that it stagnates, particularly in sustainability and science.
Okay.
That's the first Sun card.
Wait, where does the Sun card say it only meant?
It's about science, technology needs innovation.
Well, yeah, science. It's a scientific and technological development that's talking about financial services in those areas.
Yeah, that's stagnating because they are adapting to emerging technology.
Okay.
So it
The
can't
card also
solve
talks about
those
the financial system and information technology and digitalization. Is the app defend fintech for like digital banks, etc.?
I mean, we like. I'm pretty sure the app is just. I think it would result in.
Okay, cool. I want to talk about the just mandate of the plan. So, from my understanding, the limits card describes fintech, or like there's sort of barriers right now, which means that fintech cannot be patented. What barriers does the plan text remove? That means that fintech is now patentable.
The Alice court case specifically has made it so that most business method patents and software patents are invalidated on patent eligibility concerns. The AF makes it so that.
Okay, so the app changes the eligibility of the app.
Yeah, for.
Okay, great.
For
I want to talk about the
business methods.
sanction scenario. So Manuel and Basni is talking about the tech race. Could you explain to me like why? Then where does this card even mention the word fintech being key to sanctions?
Well, obviously it would be
Wait,
because
obviously. Come on, we're doing an internal link.
We need technology that
Great.
sustains the flow of the dollar.
Cool, amazing. We need tech. I mean, we have tech now. The card is obviously talking about the status of the tech race in the past 4 years. America and China have been doing fine. Where does this card be saying we need more fintech innovation for effective sanctions?
quote, China is taking the lead in sophistication and scale. Yuan is centralized. If Chinese tech gains a following, it makes it difficult for the West to enforce sanctions.
Okay,
So in
yes,
fact,
the
uniqueness on
yuan is centralized, so you're telling me that the app would result in the US currency being centralized on a digital platform? Like, how else does the US outcompete China? If you're right that China's outcompeting us because of digital currencies.
Sorry, what?
Like, does the app centralize the American currency? You said the reason China's ahead of us is because their currency is centralized. What does the app do to make sure that
Yeah, it would
that
probably
outcomes-
result in dollar dominance.
Dollar dominance? What's dollar dominance?
Like, same thing that we're kind of describing here. That, like, everyone's kind of using the dollar, it has international merit.
Okay, we're gonna take that time. Okay, 1:30.
Well, yeah, it was whatever. It's more like a process. But like the city has points for the conflict.
Okay, it's
Yeah, like that one. Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
7, then the bench.
Can you open it,
It's not working.
Everyone good?
Yeah.
Good? Okay. First off, protection means enforcement of an existing right IP. For the protection IP, it means enforcement of an exclusive economic rights creation violation of the expand IP to create rights where nothing exists now does not spread the protection of an existing IP right. What you should limit gun. The mention means that anything in the universe that does not exist eligible now can be an app with no negative resource, making negative proposal. Next off is no T, no Congress protection by PR until judicial enforcement includes right policy. Until protection increases Taiwan as a judicial enforcement violation, they are not limits gun laws. Where protection president agency be. Next off, the United States. The United States ought to develop desalination facilities, initiate conventional bloody from nose first rock and democratic people to look at North Korea, if and only if it increases. And patent eligibility for natural technology business. Method patents give $100 billion to the developing nation commit to removing and barring any office from president who does not increase patent eligibility for financial technology business. Method practice 47% should not do so. Prohibit patent created price system desalination fixes market price. So we're looking at what.
Skip the card.
Plank 2 solves no co-extinction. The code of 20 protecting the US no protectability threats. I believe it will suffer consequences to nuclear threats. I believe the US provoking crisis aspect of countries that body. No to this debate underability will be shared. First, make credible customer imposed a low threshold of nuclear war breakdown. Reputation cause out the support of elites. Leaders on armaments for they make decisions. Liberty of nation, US to Canada, but it will strengthen nuclear. Nobody that part of the country and couple of Blockian. Newly started nuclear crisis. Removal prevents rule of law and extinction from a litany of things. Global and 317 Trump presidency on the way to the majority tools. Until media that might be critical. And the news outlets will fall. Unless the Trump on the way to the course to intimidate but it's just some competition elections. Need unvarnished reporting. Trump became active and English leadership. It's not party personal loyalty. Party dismal constitution. Trump has been far after for controlling budget. Its intention is to serve a third term to keep Trump for VP with term limits. With all the superpower democracy. Not a great problem. Great problem. After good courage in liberal party, cut liberal policy. The last plank price is bad. Market-based innovation through patents, resource, scan social catastrophic risk prices. Promote the good but avoid the bad. Fulfill on 24. Innovation can be beneficial, but just easily awful. Antisocial harms patents, which are innovation as socially valuable, which is the risk. Exhibition of regulation plus catastrophic risk. Due to externality, economic device markets are not created. Policy makers spend innovation.
dollars price. Next off is the Betsy Canada, the United Government ought to rule China Betsy Canada prohibits unilaterally increasing patent eligibility for financial business method patents and proposed the above as an amendment to the agreement and immediately comply with the amendment for ratified and invoking Betsy over patents. The solidifies U.S. trade checks and the Paragraph 16. Our domestic IP statute updated only sporadically. The court avoids such responsibility for domestic committed by China Betsy Canada U.S. The statute countries as conflict agreement on quality came to pardon. Betsy as international economy avoid undermining the U.S. standing. The given statute means pretty stable and for U.S. companies that's through domestic effort have financial trust with identifiable U.S. agreements is key part of campaign interest goals to the U.S. before China create not routine by calling the very rules that U.S. promotes U.S. undermine that military global strategy to the S undermine rule of SDG. United Betsy failure cost of nuclear workstation by 23. China lead to U.S. nuclear war U.S. mission for near-term concessions. By protecting countries and turning them to trade over perimeter, who represent China's trade for STS and recover terrorism, vulnerability, nuclear war, molecular, and the military risk by the greatest one. Independence was a stabilizing force, containment, was that economic coalitions of whether U.S. defense interests were no, it caused nuclear breakup by Seoul, Taipei, Tokyo, Bologna, collapse in the launch of New York City, U.S. pretty serious actions China, U.S. arms something Chinese, test the ballistic indicator, Johnson, launch to translate next after 3G, next after the government should establish a switch in intellectual property, productions for financial technology, business by stuffing technology into intellectual property regime, creates false obligation to overburden courts and kills democracy, switch narrows regime solves mental, and the new technology stuff with different forms of IP and the public will be very to generic regime confusion or incoherence and get it to patent eligibility with flow resources the litigation quick innovation IQ that corruption force showcase manager people are going to miss out social security weeks are gone forever other cases of increased which judges in the case manager which the elementary process keep it democracy one shot Russian judges case manager innovation based on consider still affects the complex case criminal law and ban public benefit cases and then the patent litigation and it's going to German judiciary affects patent law need to ensure the judges have resources and time just the US democracy prevents global war culture in 21 the rules of the security population security in the US once you begin to leader role as leader of the liberal coalition terror Chinese or Russian aggression responsibility for democracy hanging over all humanity suspected nuclear war terrorists is still feasible to preserve the rule and to be necessary to live during nuclear pressure next of the primacy the one zero represents a commitment to the primacy of the aggressive and stable world which must reject Jackson to the primacy so strong stability primacy requires the opposite requires keep people at the case of speech Germany confer good China's getting China's ability to pursue the PLA depends on the extent of our culture that what's actually ready for the next telephone from China and U.S. are to decline that is an American and Germany needs to ban the primacy or stability of primacy is not just revenge the alternatives to reject the pursuit of primacy in favor for real consolidation the one is the Germanic power pressure cost nuclear annihilation for closest corporation necessary to arrest existential eco collapse so try hard for the ultimate to rather than when you had German US the water change and nuclear power adapt the empire and the was concentrated all the power nuclear world war the new cold war food corpse necessary to arrest the exact degrading by friendly near fundamental shape rules of power rather than it was maximum with a lot of US armors to without overreach and engage where it's possible to destabilizing as regional war power the US with ability to protect power and preserves peace with people military aggression issue will be helpful to the US while great to address domestic problems rights of global south China can make a war inevitable and give itself self-trust with the US and should really dominance next oil prices are high enough to back up Vision 2030 keep it starting diversification also in 81 Vision 2030 is with current investment build and push towards diversification study eventually building harness oil revenue oil revenue $75 division foreign for many goods capital machine and services expected of earnings cut the card at earnings the plan sexual carbon policy kills Middle East oil imports, collapses prices, insurance emissions. Middle East oil imports are inevitably backed by oil prices and requires sustain oil rents and the support growth of the social welfare of public employment and other potential carbon policy to reduce emissions. Putting more stress on oil exports, trade funds, and mitigate use falls to Middle East countries. There has been a cash energy transition that may fit the market drift, but even lower. Sudden oil loss of revenue before diversification triggers complete sudden collapse of the Middle East war, global nuclear war, or the 20 stability costs funded by from oil establishing social contracts of guaranteeing oil and non-accused sponsor, such as first dividing into new oils and new lances, low oil prices generating current regimes boosting the conflict oil faced development of first collapse will be a matter of time and another. Conflicts stability across the Middle East. Now, the case page 1. Fintech is unsustainable. Lurking financial factors plague instability. The McKinley 22. Lurking financial sectors dangerous from discomfort for tech innovation to manufacture stability in the middle. Could be vulnerable to run to by negative press. Company instability to be transported to peace instability. 2. Fintech cybercrime, cybertax, and banking, money laundering. Signal 23. Financial target. Digital defense cybertax. The main thing is cybercrime and money laundering. Fintech facing new fraud cases. Let people tomorrow. Compromise the and arrested. On the minutes 23. Cybercrime guarantees rampant uncareful use of cyber responding to social helps. Extension or remnant 15. On the future world failing to cybermen increasing cyberspace collapse of the worldwide numerical political collapse society the capital governments demanding response build a virtual expanding damage for social political activism infrastructure uncover hostile attacks habits good financial crisis and social unrest 5 fintech provides
defense.
5. Cooperation prevents water wars. Age 18. Cooperation prevails in conflict is part of historical evident conflict as well as the cost of war how to justify only once water war ever have an indulgence. Number 2. There can be evidence of cooperation is there where those that out of 1,831 cooperation none of it. World War no food wars of state. If you look at that food increases and the conflict products food has a means of that will most people on starvation opposition towards the violence consistent one complex retail land ownership representative reforms and economic problems research show that while the media has tendency to research explanation debates and the more complex no urbanization and no development of agriculture death of development for digital in countries history and policies leading minds from structural barriers conflict global development leading stating that short-term additional ag in the sector though trying to develop financial pyramid schemes, unemployed and unemployed youth, pivotal approach to development, goes institutions will have no real answer. Trump thumbs rule of law generally declining, global GDP, the risk of disease 0.01%, and pulling out WHO makes a notable note. In 2022 pandemic, with 30 increasing very small probability, GCR conference being estimated on killing more than 1 billion people, 5% or estimate probability of essential risk from 3.01%. China and Russia all cause urbanization. There's no reason they solve internationally. Dollar hedge does solve war. I've invested in 20 debate about over the financial architecture goes empire. Dollars from the secure American imperial interventions in extension to reduce dollar centralized international finance who send new switch rocks oil from the dollar, but the US invasions of countries back to the denomination. The US wants to around similar years. The money exchange rate due to dollar is being agenda back by China. And Russia working to diversify the reserves valuable and non-dollar currency. The only monetary multilateralism can ensure that nations have ability to express after emergency and for the US to directed global plan. Sanctions fail and are avoided. Russia, Iran both prove that they do not work. Dollar crashes, pumped quality in 2006 means that COVID and the rise of BRICS destroy no democracy impact. Their stability can be rebuilt economies. In 70 failures do not do between 2017 and 2016, 91 countries improve more stable but improving more giants such as China, Indonesia, Mexico, but the worst performance small even consequently Liberia. And Syria alone is lacking drug adult sources detected that both are not relevant to bad rules, often are replaced with better ones.
The card say
FinTech enables profit structure system that causes inequality and poverty. Section 23, FinTech structure increases inequality and new opportunity for such profits and funding, imposing profitable fees on low income consumers' payments to 40 trillion figures. People kinds of assets FinTech can aggravate debtors and poverty. FinTech causes fraud and financial crisis. You have to justify infinite condo because it's unfair. Anything else? Okay. Good for us.
What did you skip?
The first card on the advantage counter plan.
Is that it?
Sorry?
Is that it?
I also skipped the FinTech causes fraud and financial crisis.
But
And
we
then
read
I
everything
skipped
else and nothing else that's not in it all.
No. I mean, other than nuance, just by content at the bottom, but yeah.
Okay. The advantage counter plan. How does the impeachment plan compete?
The counter plan does not fiat the plan. It does not fiat at any point that at any branch in the government does the plan. It fiats that it holds that if Trump doesn't do the plan, he gets impeached.
Why can't we just remove Trump?
Like what? An intrinsic perm?
No, but the counter plan removes Trump. That's a function of the counter
No,
plan.
it does not fiat that Trump is removed. It only fiats that
Yeah,
Congress.
you said commit to removing him.
Yeah, no, Congress fiats that it would be removed of the plan. Like there has to be a discrete thing that he's impeached for. All impeachments require like a cause. The counter plan fiats the cause is not doing the plan.
So to be clear, we cite something that's not illegal as the basis for impeachment, correct?
Something that's not illegal.
Yeah, not doing the plan obviously isn't against the law.
Sure, I guess, yeah.
Okay, cool.
The oil DA. What's the link?
Your 1AC evidence describes like a green transition, I think.
What's the
Sustainable urbanization just probably involves a bunch of cities buying renewable energy.
It also says FinTech is key to green bonds, the
What are green
implication of green bonds.
Oh, wait, actually, yeah, green bonds definitely linked.
What are green bonds?
I think, what are green bonds?
Basically, from my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the Johnson card talks about different funds which are given as more SDGs are accomplished and fulfilled. The logical implication of this is that
Right,
as companies
so
use less and
one of-
less emissions, they fulfill more and more
So
SDGs, more and
One
more
of the,
green bonds.
Like some of the SDGs that we're talking about as the SDG governance are just using water and achieving
No.
water scarcity.
I'm gonna read you a quote right now. 17 SDGs mitigating climate change by storing large amounts of carbon
I
dioxide.
didn't read that card.
Okay, so then how do you solve any of the sustainable development scenarios?
I didn't read the sustainable development scenario.
Then how do you solve any of like the future stuff, the stuff above it either? You don't solve megacity collapse either.
Yeah, we give them water.
What? You can, giving people
So there's
water
no link to
solves
this.
megacity collapse?
Yeah. I mean, you give
What?
them
Okay,
water.
explain.
No. It's my process.
Okay.
So what
No
else is
internal
the
link.
oil
Great.
side?
Sounds fabulous.
What?
What's the link to the oil side?
We can read these cards in the 2NC. That lead draft the loyalty is.
So you can read the impact.
Yeah,
of
also
the
you've read a
activities.
FinTech advantage. That's probably
Okay.
Well, we've also read defense, just simple organization. But we're not going to read the impact,
Sorry,
just the
what?
internal link. We're not going to read the impact, just the internal link. Like green bonds do X, Y, Z.
How does desalination solve water scarcity internationally?
If the well, same thing probably applies to your plan, but if the United States were to like do it, other countries would probably follow on.
Okay. Status.
Status quo is also the logical option.
Okay, we'll take some prep. send it now. We'll give the order in seconds. Anyone not good enough? Or, sorry, order. It's gonna be case. Yeah.
Yeah, case.
Yeah. Cool. Case, T courts, T pre-existing, I think they call it subject matter. The critique, the advantage counterplan, the sweet generous counterplan, the charming Betsy counterplan, and then the oil of the set. Anyone need that again?
Maybe not, but I needed this.
For sure. Bill, you all good?
Yep.
Okay. Once truth, here, once you're good. Alright, just have sharpened? I got it. Anyone not? Cool.
The turn is wrong, it's not unique, it's fintech existing that stats code distributed, the plan is not reversing, the plan only ensures that it's updated to protect water sources and to benefit emerging technology. Their cards are universally terrible. The first one is just about how Venmo isn't making quite enough money. That is completely different. The affirmative certainly solves and enables rapidly exponentially increasing innovation, which solves all the downsides and enables the upsides of it regardless. The upsides obviously outweigh the downsides, they're existential, whereas theirs barely have an internal link to anything at all. Inequality does not cause institutional collapse. In other words, the more 19 arguers justify no ability to be lower than alcohol, just on any issues, trying to rest on population when references are different. Not followed by policy regime goes on. Money breakdown policy are lower mental and higher income groups are similar relationships, but preferences are not as different. Median policy on 80% of majorities. All agreed. Wow, this card is long. The views of rich were not affected by legislation for 91. Oh wait, legislation voted less than proposals publicly not find that listing companies plus representation bodies have more to do with party than income. They like weak states not failed. States Patrick 17. Organized crime was the life conditions of state and carbon depending on state the other criminals. Navigation model levels of state weak and collapse of war turn. Let's attract consumer living fishes and functional requirements. In more terms, they throw through profits on. They mention based on proximity. Cyber attacks are obviously done by the thousands of cyber attacks that happen every single day. They have to win a reason why they would be worse, which doesn't exist. When the turn is status quo descriptive, water wars cause extinction. Our evidence is more recent. They don't assume use of the loser pressures for converting crises. Food wars cause extinction. That's our clear evidence for it. Our Richard evidence cites a meta-analysis that says the best studies conclude that it does cause it. Could see the development defense not going for it. It takes out the terminal impact to the steering on the turn. Wolf law, it prevents extinction. It's a collapse, destroys global cooperation for fragile states. That's our Albertson evidence. Trump proves that it works because he's being restrained by the courts. That system models internationally only full collapse would cause our impacts, disease, cause extinction, recombination. Mutation, bypass your defense, innovation means that non-who dissemination is trivial. Sanctions prevent nuclear war, that's our soft items. They do not assume the nations that are more reliant on the dollar than Russia was, and Iran did not actively go to war. Regardless, Russia hasn't won the war, which proves that they do work. Dollar hedge prevents extinction, collapse causes nuclear lashdown, and regional conflicts in Asia and the Middle East that draw on great powers. It's augural and polar. This is not fun because every currency declined during COVID. And the other example is stupid. They dropped legacy collapse and destroys global infrastructure that's crib that kills everyone on Earth. T courts, we meet text, we could be the courts. Counter-interpretation protections only Congress should oppose only one. 2 distinct elements of protection, enforcement, protection of rights. 2, the statutes are wide laws, codified as subject to judiciary, enforcement, application, discretion, enforcement agents, predictability, libertas has no clause, nor intent to find, which our evidence does. Ground, the courts have to reinterpret the status quo, decimate offense. Functional limits, Congress based assets, case and innovation, capital check. And reasonability is key to all debates and after predictability and quality debates. T pre-existing, we meet all IPs pre-existing, and we enhance pre-existing eligibility standards from before out. Strengthening protection of IPR, because acquisition, scope of remedies, ventilation, database of every court opinion, or data concerning comprehensive argument, concerning that accuracy is required by disclosure in the remedies. Predictability, Mandel's most contextual qualified. It has intent to define broadly that turns and guides prep background. They do not have intent to exclude or to define the verb for the resolution. That snowballs into random T definitions with no restrictions. Cross-applied defense or above. The critique framework where the entire one is against an alternative with unique links. 1 is fairness, moving 8 minutes, and particularly shifting with conditions. Structure cases advantages. The F, turn to both overcomes links or cannot overcome status quo. And then extinction outweighs. Yeah, because it precludes future battle life and death denies agency. The links there are non-unique because the critiques of the current foreign policy, and it's obviously zero link. We didn't defend a hedge impact. Aggression will be self-restrained, but dollar hedge straight turns the impact. Ross 92 forces. Military aggression will counter China's self-development. Creates force on the help of the U.S. ultimate deterrent. Second, the opposition country majority of population reinforce each other. They use this defeat and public peaceful economic competition to pressure. The turn of aggression parent to escalate attacks and provoke conflict pressure. And pressure allies. You think I need
Absolutes. No. Absolutes environment.
Yeah, the app solves the environment, which is their other terminal. In fact, ultra limited domestic public actors, key to app defense is the most real world floating picture of an issue. They move the plan cause reactionary one sees the all cannot solve. One is the app, whatever they've critiqued is key, including intellectual property. And yeah, condos of voting issue. One is fairness, who's often just checks on input planks. Super two is bad debates, encourages sandbagging. The stress testing legalized double turns or interpret as uncondo the advanced counterplan permanent plan.
Yes.
They said it was bad.
Yeah.
Okay, non-resolutional theory is bad. It's definitely aggressive. There are infinite things the app can do to make debate better, but then those none of them are reasons that they should lose. Yeah, it's unfair. Advanced counterplan. Per to the plan and initiate a first strike on North Korea. Its function is legitimate because the counterplan fiance. Plank 1 can't solve water shortages. Our problems are global, which requires the tech itself to be disseminated as well. Giving money to developing countries cannot give them water infrastructure according to the plan. The counterplan over other issues advances worse cannot solve trucks. 24 giant system more end of law and career without doing a lot of damage. He does not think it's fair to replace the rule of law to replace the judicial creates. Using the military right up at the enemy, use the DOJ to back outside companies, prosecute donors to try to give him for money. Ignore the rule of the Constitution gave access to election is the one pitch in America where overturn the results of 28 doesn't solve President and they're getting impeached because of not doing the plan because it wouldn't be publicly announced or it fiance threat. So perm to the counterplan and then do the plan, and it collapses legal and industry uncertainty, which is key to plan solvency. Certainty is key as a stable law. Investors will refuse to risk R&D and fintech to killing innovation. New process kills certainty. Bellarmine 19. Financial statement development regulatory complexes unsettled rules cards and approaches to give rise to more organizational complexity from overly expensive firms to the bosses to succeed. Right line rules are key. Bellarmine 19. These are right line legislative innovations and fintech rules offering permanent right away belief there's been no legal uncertainty clear. And so freezing clients are encouraged. Firms and investors say no, everyone hates the plan. Turn to the plan, impeach the 47th president. It is not intrinsic because impeachment is a function of the counterplan. The prospect causes a nuclear lash out proven by his belligerent statement. Trump 1.0 thumbs the impact. Perm both shields the link and yeah, no impact. Chronic 910. This was area about it. I have a staff to list of it. Star Wars, all you can trouble is effective with the focus on using monsters and professionals are adults in the room. Mark the card at adults in the room. Sui generous.
Oh shit, just keep going.
Okay, the sui generis counterplan picks or badly steal the app. Perm do both. The sui generis fails for software agreement. Join the 93 sui generis. Facing digital time and effort to get into system of the uncertain various and not as an industry way to see how it reports. Then agency applied any systems reasonably tailored. Not only quickly being added to software to reference to outpace the new law. Perm to the counterplan. New regulatory rules. SBA finance, which is all the stuff that I did above. Sui generis causing confusion. Piece about application working out legal uncertainty is illustrated with respect to so in such a matter of form. As usual, intensive and slow. The evaluation and administration regenerative rates creates considerable cost of contract management rights and to determine the application of legal and easily just based on right courts does not be needed to exist and cost relates to legal clarity. Mark the card and legal clarity. The core plug benefit they don't have uniqueness for this. Link term capital 24. The biggest limited pattern this was section 1 was a litigation causing good holders analysis as section 1 over and raised over to the year after 3016 to the 100 were short clarity balance assured and only used in limited situations thumbed because they benefited patent holders in eligibility and the charming Betsy counterplan plan plan 2 cross apply everything from policeman to the planet. Citing as upholding Charming Betsy can US laws key no one would know expect or accept the change absent codification at least every deficit, no impact table laundry list with words but no war for extinction, no spillover from one instance and some by every single time we've done something that's in line with international law. Perm to the counterplan, the US thumbs in China 19, despite their prohibition, the US determined to oppose the terrorist right to the United and sanctions disregard of WTO law. Perm to the counterplan, then the plan, the WTO says no U11. Developing countries push for high protection in the WTO, developing countries register for opposition citing depression, the talks that EU with the Japan administration, the US and the strengthen and trips to the list of local countries about high sector, which they had difficulty complying. Mark the card and difficulty complying. Go back to the counterplan. Advanced counterplan?
Yeah.
Price is wrong. Empiric con 20. If you have to growth analysis, price and other students don't offer instead of activity to price the market and the right price over the value of the payment will have consequences including on college which incurs the answer can be for the payout value analyze everything. The market institution realizes 60,000 prices more than the other. As inducing innovation, the oil is that price collapse is inevitable. Trump ensures either oversupply or trade war. Young in 1925. No Trump's urgent of increase oil production, lower prices, trigger original price, or vision with needed price of production increases increase oversupply, market trade delay, investments like notice all these workers completely vision 20 year emission commercial risk, trading relations to the economic consequences of the transfer from hills farmer events tensions. We did not read the scenario that they have established a link to, which means you get entirely new answers in the 1 AR. Middle East research charges are larger to link to war itself, though impact by facilitating more reproach. No impact attempts are inevitable. The plan prevents the failure of financially unsustainable renewable energy. Saudi collapse is inevitable for research 20. Global activity climate to boost renewables for producers less than package GCU 2 trillion wiped out. For the peak of oil, current reforms not only diversification, not sufficient higher prices on the professor force downsides of the Middle East. Units will benefit on page of accounts for 80% GDP vision from there to hard time. Again, will even third earnestly try and mark the card earnestly try Middle East collapse inevitable from all this stuff I did on case. The tons of the price volatility continues to slow down growth is cruising internally. Not only Friday 19 oil precision episodic high voltage since the 80s when 14 parties reached the dynamic drama systems slow Chinese no fission older revolution can sharp reduction in imports study endure low oil pressure long time instead of volatility space low time growth and Chinese demand not in the industrial sector. Mark the card that industrial sector abrupt policy responses are inevitable proven by Trump. They are prepared. Jeff 20 national oil companies of Saudi are taking most emission reduce emission to renewable comprehensive study concentrated has the lowest emission among major producers of energy efficiency. Invest in CCS. Mark the card and invest in CCS. No Middle East war. John 23 not like subject to Middle East war support for the US Army financial military in the steel intensive unification conflict. The global China's average Beijing is dependent on just want to see any disruption based in interest stable Gulf in line with American. Saudi is resilient averaging 24. Different costs.
Okay. Recent direct team, condo, anything else?
Condo, PIX,
Yes.
vague, alts, international fiat, private actor fiat.
Okay.
I think
Let's talk about your certainty deficit.
Sure.
What sector is it? The entire fintech sector? Is every fintech on case a deficit to this?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Why do investors care about what investors care about the process as opposed to the end result?
Every investor who's concerned with what future action will occur, if there's a strange, convoluted new process that they have never seen used that defines the future of financial technology, then that clearly has implications for what the government will do in the future.
That's because
they have absolutely no idea if this is durable. It could get rolled back.
Okay,
they don't trust anything about
it's
this.
durable, it can get rolled back, and they're worried that their money that they put in will get taken out at any point. That's your internal link.
Yeah, they would experience losses because of a sudden shift in the law.
What card substantiates this?
Our Brummer card and
Sorry,
our Brummer card.
how do I spell that?
BRUMMER.
2AC or 1AC?
2AC.
Okay.
And
So
what is
if-
the second card?
And your argument is that any deviation from past precedent would cause that? Seriously, what card says that?
Well, the argument that it makes is pretty simple. It just says, quote, it's less protected because of regulatory complexity, uncertainties caused by things like unsettled rules carved out in, quote, varied approaches. This is as good as the certainty deficit gets now.
Okay. So this card is from 2019. Trump in 2024 has done all of those things. He has crushed the economy, he's increased tariffs over and taken it down again. Why would these not decimate certainty, especially because he's doing this to the entire economy?
Because it had nothing to do with patent law. Our entire argument is
But
about
your
this
argument is seriously that Trump has done nothing with patent law.
Yeah.
Crashing the entire economy will not affect any of these
That had
investors.
absolutely nothing to do with investment in patents and financial
Okay,
technology.
what card, Brummer?
You need to produce a card that says this first, dude. I'm not going to answer
Obviously, we'll read
arguments
like 5 cards on this in the block.
Okay, do
Brummer,
it.
where does
Let's
this card
move on.
say that people care about patents as opposed to broader economic context?
The 1AC establishes that people care about patents in relation to
No. You said the certainty deficit card says Brummer card. Where does this say anything about patents? It says the broader financial system
It's
is
also
super
in the
important.
1AC, the second card.
The second card in the 1AC as well.
Okay, from 2020 again, not about Trump.
Okay, Trump was president for 4 years before this. People have already integrated his unpredictable types of policymaking, but the counterplan is a completely different beast.
Okay.
Impeachment has never been fully achieved.
Yeah. So
Right.
which long-term card did you read on sui generis?
I read the Capitalist card.
Sure. Capitalist 24. Okay. Betsy, or actually, the Trump counterplan. Why is it uncertain? The impeachment counterplan.
Because you're literally removing the president.
Yeah, but
No matter how uncertain Trump is, this is even more so.
Okay. I have 5 seconds.
Okay. We'll take 5 times for right now. Wait, are you all setting up perm text
Which one?
on other issues?
Which firm are you referring to?
No, it's okay, it's fine. recommend good for an order?
Yeah.
Order is T, no subject matter. The sui generis counterplan case.
Is that it?
Huh?
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me get the doc down here.
Sorry, do you know subject matter is the enforcement one?
It's the
Dagny
Dagny
14.
one, yeah.
Okay.
Topical aspects and testify the safeguards associated with the existing exclusive use rights covered by the asset, the act violence, or its new intellectual property rights that didn't exist before the stage. For nothing protection that stagnated. The we and me is literally nonsensical, even if the rights existed before the act is creating new rights and new protection areas that violate. They violate. Would 20, the 2 AI generated new idea patent rights, only inventor, without inventor these rights, they do not exist, there can be no patent. Now, 282 is the manual evidence that interpretation limits or offense 1 limits that the act provides anything intangible that doesn't cover IP laws now that's totally unmatchable to 307,000 applications. However, rejected or aroused alone and reversing anyone could be an aft. Use could make diagnostics, voice tech, genes, AI, Bitcoin, future alien tech, drugs, or organisms, or give rights. It's like an easy at scale of affirmatives. Limits outweigh debate. Debate's a game, and it involves some degree of imprecision because none of us are true experts. It's better to keep the topic roughly functional and create a stable environment of legal walking and coin flip determines every single debate. 2 is ground negative generics like we're calling this single counterplan get deleted by infinite amount of new subject matter apps. 3, their interpretation is legally worse. Their evidence that says that literally anything that quote could have a net effect on IP could be topical, which crushes negative ground. Now, next argument I need to answer is predictability. Predictability is wrong. The predictability is wrong. 1 is that limits guide predictability because we're not legal experts whatsoever. 2 is that community consensus solves and shapes in order through the course of the season, which is sufficient to solve. 3 is that view predictability through a threshold. Anything else leaves any limiting input on the topic. So it's asking just why it's not precise enough. Now, over limiting all their standards, there's wrong. 1, average allows a quarter of affirmatives, overturn eBay, expand what's covered, etc. Biotech waivers, e-commerce app, etc. 2 subsets solve even limiting mechanisms. They can apply in any subset area of law. 3 limits outweigh over limiting is a joke. Think of the last case specific DA debate that you've heard on this topic. Functional limits, none. They all get deleted by an after certainty deficit, and they cannot be connected to each app. Contrived prosecute by involving people. Reading straight down competition blocks and generate politics as constitutional debates. 3, they fail. Any subject to a question generic 1 and 2 with link stumpers, etc. And they cannot be tailored, which I did above. Last is reasonability. They're not reasonable if they trade the bottom topic that was above. 2, reasonability is bad. It's arbitrary, which causes just intervention. There's no way to predict how it will be applied to any given area, meaning that next will still be burdened with an unreasonable requirement, but competing interpretations is the best question to race in top by encouraging the best possible practices. The sui generis counterplan. Framing issue at the top is that the 2NC has dropped the terminal impact of the internal net benefit, and they dropped the fact that the counterplan largely solves every risk of an internal link. That any risk that the counterplan solves the case, with a literally like cards from 1993 to be sufficient. The counterplan solves the greatest sui generis regime over financial technology that incentivizes innovation in that field. Modify the counterplan text already here. The next government should establish sui generis protections for financial technology business methods. That's separate from a patent regime and is not messed eligibility debates. Expanding eligibility of patents causes a lot of core confusion, which I'll explain below. First argument is picks bad, picks are good. 1, they're key to negative flexibility. Anything else makes it impossible since literally every counterplan does not compete. 2, this logic it rejoins the function of the affirmative, which should be sufficient. 3, cross-play reject non-red theory. Next argument is do both. That mutually exclusive. The term sui generis means the only one of its kind. That means the counterplan bans the plan. Samuelson 85, whether it is actually protected by existing law or new protections and controversy. Congress is resolved the sui generis fine. As the only one of its kind. 2, links to that benefit includes the plan clogs of courts. 3, does not solve the case. Overlapping protections exacerbate confusion and ambiguity. Samuelson the 85 injury. The independent search for multiple layers of inconsistent protection. The sui generis will have to be devised. No longer stack up layers and words with these pure problems. Also see but sorting. Now overlapping protection. That creates impenetrable monopolies and a separate link to the net benefit means. 15 various fields may offer simultaneous protection. The lead to overgrowth. It is time that these areas, even their own patch with sui generis law, forcing categories event long ago with one opposite compatible delegate. Compromise or destroyed fields whenever intended to overlap. Now, next argument is it fails for software. The issue here is the green card does not apply. It says, quote, when the sui generis protection is too limited to a technology, software will advance. That does not matter because if the affirmative's patent protection is enough to solve the advantage, and so is the counterplan because the counterplan recreates the same production. But our sui generis protection is one of useful aspects that eliminates any deficit to fail plenty. Although commentators argue that practicability and act as separate legislation to free new technology supports of particular tech warrants such as sui generis, incorporating various aspects from business, copyright, patent, trademark law, along with new aspects to program the exact needs of the industry. Agreement stumped card from the 1990s, but it's empirically worked. To learn 13 sui generis protect non-traditional subject matter. In the US and the EU, sui generis have regularly been employed for biotechnology and design and databases. Adopting a sui generis scheme for protection of software is superior to stretching existing accurate categories. A software is a difficult phenomenon to classify has been perceived perplexing lawyers. Key difficulties of unique dual nature consists of two elements, both expression and functionality. Difficulty in making software adhere to bifurcation needed from the general problematic developments, current laws, unclear precedent, has model legislation interpreted beyond exclusively meaning of all the regulatory secured of opposing lobbies. The replacement with sui generis is best way forward because the problems arise when applying copyright protection is afforded to individuals' persons. The idea behind the disregard function is not appropriate copyright is for works that for pleasure done, the period to decode the courts of attempt to widen the quasi patent fit square pagan around whole software patents and operates monopolies on ideas of program the lucrative power afforded is vastly greater. Market the card, that vastly greater, and software protections need to balance openness with innovation incentives that can be achieved through a sui generis scheme. Phillips 92 logically apply copyright. That would give no protection to software filler. The incentive of recent applications arguably give an expensive protection to certain elements. Let the iteration for exceeds technological lifetime results in stagnation of progress to balance. The new protections needed that will last only long enough to keep costs with scientific baseline monopolies who litigate competitors out of existence. Sui generis schemes eliminate courts place annually. 3A sui generis avoid diversity enforce extension of prosecuting patents. The one area of law not sufficient to deal with this complex legal issue live. That deprives the courts of opportunity to preside as imperative to mold both copyright and patent law. Court circuit split takes legitimacy and rule of law. When the 20 circuit splits increases right by the law raises the question of the splits raise question of the fairness undermines legitimacy of closes the trust in the court. The perception is the legitimacy. Next argument is permutation to the counterplan and severance order for our argument of responsibility and conditionality destroys fairness in clash. They said it's a functional limit on topicality, which means that either we prove that there's no functional limits or the counterplan competes. One IPR, the counterplan creates a legal right to exclusivity that protects investment, but is not an intellectual property right to work solely. 5, the readers going to believe that copyright is inadequate. Therefore, the urgent new right, the sui generis is not a thing intellectual property rights. It is unique economic criteria. 2 is in the counterplan protects the plan's IPR outside of copyright patents or trademark. The plan must protect within those categories. Comes 24 sui generis on the scale rights to the IP rights used for the protection for specific matter and deferred from the traditional forms into a copyright trademark plan, reflecting the little meaning of the term of its own kind. Prefer our interpretation for limits and ground. They make it so that literally any form of patent generic will not apply because they have to say the app is sui generis. Next argument is the certainty deficit. 1. The Brummer card is literally so bad it does not say the words financial technology and the quote new regulatory and the rules which are inevitable or being destroyed by Trump right now. 2. It's uncertain inevitable. That will be the 1 and 3. Britain is not about the apps about database. Empirics about database rights do not apply ever. 8. There may be some sense of a completely new regime of the European database rights. That's something next. It's going to be creating and rotating information in the secure report and also to ambiguities in education the kind of pitfalls of sui generis right for the software. In fact, any form of the law must avoid it to be viable. The step forward, the use of clear and ambiguous terms to be the prevent loopholes arising. Innovators and authors care about the protection, not the label. Stretching traditional protection causes more uncertainty. Working 96 innovators not overly troubled by the labels attached to their rights. They simply want to prohibit unfairly competing and responding to demands. Laws can run up against conceptual distortions and questionable to squeeze the plot, which is sort of that with undesirable consequences for copyright generally. A generous approach, the tailor-made rights have favored the approach. Now, I'm extending the net benefit at the top. They've conceded the terminal impact. I don't remember the exact part you've read, but the democracy impact is clear. That is stuffing more things into the courts cause massive amounts of confusion and causes democracy. Drop the democracy keeps every laws of essential threats like AI inequality, etc. It turns all of case, all forms of exporting in terms of international SDCs are all crushed if the US is seen as Russia 2.0. Now, the link is definitely. I'll answer the link term for I'll answer the arguments. They say non-unique. Come on, this is literally the words non-unique without an argument. Strike it off your flow. I know you did not catch a word. Next argument is the link term. The counterplan solves it first because it would still provide sui generis protections, which means they would not go to that same area. 2 is confusion, but the 2 I'll do the link here. 2 confusion. Stuffing subject matter into patent law creates confusion surrounding eligibility by distorting decades law. Precedent and task that reversely incentivizes the inventors to go to court to crack open fissures and gain protection for tons of other inventions completely unrelated to the act on the courts and collapsing democracy. That's the 1 and C. Menel piece of evidence. 2 is positive feedback. Clock courts make bad religious cause uncertainty, which causes more clogs, causes spiral congestion, and turns the case. Rose associated volume of cases like courts to hand decision precise and difficult to resolve. Second shifting. Doctrinal framework creates positive feedback. Unity feels like behavior that results in increased costs, defending patents and certain rights, and a delay in resolution delays and incentive to innovate. 3 generating the Alcest opens the floodgates full in. 24 the parent order version of the presence that take worse patents out of landmark really called Alice versus Cialis made it clear that patents can just claim basic process by adding a computer later to Alice. The rules are what allow the courts to throw out the most ridiculous root on a computer software patents. Courts through out matchmaking online menu scavenger hunts of photo contest bureau. No allow transition on the computer during the ordering food through the phone. 4 loophole even if it's intentional crapping open the door will open the floodgates to legal trickery. Pyrrhus effect on mathematical formulas prove. Crocker 24 eliminating section 2 section 101 rendered limits on subject matter meaningless and then the exclusion. The states that the people may not obtain patent for a math formula merely because they're applied. Then only insignificant post-solution activity under legislation limitations no longer exists any common drafting when you certify exclusion by adding the post-solution activity to any formula applicant for then patenting something else entirely.
Just cross.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess first, your justification for confusion is that kind of placing a new thing under patent law would encourage like litigators to test like the boundaries of the new law. Why does creating a new form of protection, not encouraging to test that.
Well,
litigation.
they're entirely distinct, right? Like, think about it this way. The app does not change anything about the Alice
My
Mayo
question-
test. Wait, I can't answer your question.
Sure,
I don't want to explain.
Sure.
The way that the app changes the Alice Mayo test is that it does not actually alter the foundations of what is or isn't patentable. Instead, it keeps the Alice Mayo test alive and just tells companies, hey, look, now fintech gets patents. The counterplan is entirely distinct because it makes sure that sui generis protections do not undermine the Alice Mayo test. The Alice Mayo test is a legal doctrine that investors and companies are constantly looking to see what litigation changes are happening. When the app suddenly creates an inversion in the Alice Mayo test without justification, other industries will be stuffed and will go to the courts.
Okay, so it allows something that's, to be clear, the counterplan allows something that's not currently protected under intellectual property by the Alice test, allows it to be protected. Why is this distinct?
Yeah, the one and mental evidence is fantastic. It's explicitly saying, to quote, stuff new subject matter into patent law that creates confusion. We think that the affirmative needs reciprocal evidence at minimum that explains that stuffing subject matter into sui generis would be the same effect. I mean, it's very clear, right? Like, there's literally decades and decades of long precedent, long fissures.
Wait, do you have a card which says it avoids a net benefit?
Huh?
Which card do you think says that sui
Wait,
generis
the
avoids
2AC did not say the words links to the net benefit. We would have read cards that said that. Like, come on. You did not say the word links to the net benefit. I can read a card right now if you want
Have
me
you
to.
read a card that establishes uniqueness for the dissad?
I mean, the counterplan, what do you mean? Like
The
court
counterplan
clog
generates
low?
uniqueness? How?
Like court clog low?
Yeah.
I mean, 2AC didn't say court clog high.
Well, yeah, but you made an incomplete argument. Why should we have to answer that?
Wait, it's not an incomplete argument.
But
We
you
think
don't have
court clog
any
is linear. We think the plan causes more court clog.
Okay, so
And
it's
then-
just like it's
wait, and
linear
actually the
universe.
one and C metal evidence is that court clog right now is fine because there's not stuffing occurring rounding eligibility.
Whoa. Why? Okay, just because stuffing would make it worse, why does that mean court
Well, it says
clog
that, wait,
now?
no, I mean, it's a comparative claim, right? It says that if we were to stuff new things into subject matter, that would trigger the net benefit.
Okay, sure. I guess yeah. Like, so another question I have is that Alice has not always been law. It was, I think, 2014, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. It's been here for about a decade. Patent law has existed literally since the founding of the United States. Why would people have to test what is patentable or not?
What? No,
Like,
because
the
they're...
Alice test did not always exist. Why are they encouraged to suddenly go ham wild in litigation when they should have already been able to test this in the first 300 years of the United States' existence?
Well, before the Alice Mayo test invalidated all of the patents in the software category. Now, the Alice Mayo test would not apply to one random sector. In 2014, the Alice Mayo test invalidated all of the patents that could be potentially affected by software, right? The app only creates eligibility expansions in Section 101 for financial tech. It's completely different.
Okay, listen. Good phone order. Okay, the order is the K, the advantage counterplan, the oil DA, and then the Betsy counterplan.
And put the
Sorry, what did you say last?
Betsy counterplan.
and sui generis.
Okay, actually I lied. Sui generis at the very top. Like very, very top. Everyone get it?
Yep.
One second.
Okay, Peninsula?
We good.
Okay,
Yeah.
Clog is low. Baker Huston 2019 new patent cases filing EC dropped decline in the US to 18%, decrease in the West to 12%. Now the K kicking back over for condos good. We get what we did only against new apps. One Netflix, the asset first last breeze, and we get 30 minutes for the round. Two is innovation condos. Tunes are risk averse condo incentivized research and delivery which is better for education. C what? Non-condo fails and skews inevitable because we can just be faster than you. Everything else we're just talking about the team sui generis counterplan. Actually not sui generis. Advantage counterplan kicking, not going for reject the argument. Not the team. The only I can see not the Middle East war. Not going for the Betsy counterplan. At the top, the absence of U.S. Pacific trade blocks containing China, Greenland's coercion and trade security spirals, which leads to new breakout in every East Asian hotspot and collapses global lines invested about the evidence independently. New domestic IP statutes destroy global IP regulation, which turns case. That's Harvard evidence. The counterplan revives the charming Betsy counterplan by banning unilateral plant action because it violates I law that allows the USTR to entrench U.S. laws of trade in the the Pacific because domestic statutes are consistent with international obligations, then proposes the plan as an amendment to TRIPS, and then feels the U.S. enforces the provision if ratified. That's Harvard evidence. But we can still take the treaty plan later and judge it if they win permutations or offense is illogical because something worse than status quo. 2C1 is permanent the second plank that is severance. 1 the counterplan 1 domestic Gerhardt, and 4 domestic IP concerns the state acting in isolation. This principle materiality that IP laws constitute the border of states and system of heterogeneous states. 2 the word its WTO5 its laws means domestic laws, not international obligations or law. Prefer it. 1 limits international affirmatives to explore the topic include IP protections in other countries, destroy stable ground every counterplan. It is heavily predicate off of domestic enforcement and actors. 2 position Solomon call Harvard and Upreti are lawyers and law professors that have intent to exclude. 3 defend. In fact, terms of that benefits say no and permanently both checks. Now 2EC2 was quote unquote cross-apply everything. Are you kidding me? This is an absolute joke. Hold the line. There's zero reason why this count is uncertain. And cross-applying everything is not an argument. Anything else means you just say cross-apply everything every count, which makes being neg impossible. If they try to make this a certainty deficit, it is irresponsive. There's huge uncertainty now. All the cards are about the broader FTC economy, which Trump obviously thumps. And Pentecost 35, there are lots of sources of economic security, Doge, reference to AI, target trade policy, or even keep track of it. See, all tariff CEOs don't want to keep the walls shut, pattern of Fed, see repeating self-trade, uncertainty that even 2018, capital expenditure, markedly promotion of firms, planning investment plummeting, and trade become predominant word. They need evidence that is specific to patents. Anything else means the broader economy obviously outweighs certainty is often for the counterplan. 1 short-term uncertainty. The stems from the process is wholly irrelevant because the uncertainty is inevitable in the long term, but the counterplan is short-term. 2 Betsy uses common law and restores certainty. He was in 21. Betsy, the promotion of law happens at 2 points international norms of legitimate source of common law, consistency and predictability, dissonance among different globally. 3 treaties are the supreme law of the land, are incredibly certain. These are 21 commitments are the supreme law of the land. Are Betsy harmonized the domestic legal regime over it? Are parties that corrodes law makes state accountable through consistency of commitments. 4 sufficiency is the same rule done by the same actor enforced by the same way, which means there's no impact. The next argument is domestic law key. The counterplan solved because in the sense U.S. follow-on based in domestic law. They say laundryless. It is wrong. We have outlined a specific discrete scenario about U.S. hegemony declining and a lack of trade blocks that incentivize miscut. Don't blame the 1C for the 2C being too lazy to read our card. They say no spillover. It is wrong. 1 instance spills over because that's the precedent in the court's harbor. The distinct question is whether or not courts will adopt rules by the branches or divide answers in vague statutes as a matter of doctrine at the earliest opportunity. Just found dictate. The rest of the card was inserted in the 1C, which proves the spillover. They say permanent counterplan. It is impossible because plank 1 bans the plan. Domestically, and every single definition above demonstrates that trying to do the counterplan domestically means that the counterplan severs, and which is a voting issue for negative ground. They say U.S. thumps and no follow-on. Yes, follow-on. U.S. veto and imperial exclude. Yes, veto. And international IP treaties, British treaty, Hogan agreement, the patent corner treaty, patent law treaty, USPO, UPOV, trademark law treaty, single law treaty, Montreal Protocol trips, Bermuda Convention. Audience costs advocating the agreement creates them. Those determine U.S. policy and flips domestic support. In 21, audience sectors consistency and substance. Audience costs affects of leadership that independently of preferences of social group. Audience punishment for not being even if it's interest not in the first instance. Coverance at the agenda in international negotiations. Thus, equivalent to audience preference by defining national interest coverage and affect besides consequently emphasizing issues. They'll follow through many. 13, adherence to international norms serves a flat handset mechanism that convinces governments to prefer action and discourage defection caused by short-term political incentive. It is substituted rather than the political cost of defection. Great power sport creates international pressure to follow on empirically supposed of UN. To great power concept and reduce most states into shifting to handset, and states with severe adjustment costs will still with the crucial separation and coalition of willing great powers. The statutes for using for G7 CDG, GCR treats the development terms of standards, applying them to the GATT and later appeal. Crossplay all these cards to the say no argument because the same warrants apply. They say to the counterplan then the plan is functionally intrinsic because it introduces an element of delay that is neither in the counterplan nor the plan. There's no text sense to presume that it's textually intrinsic. Intrinsic is bad. It means they can premium anyway disadvantage, which makes being neg impossible. The final argument is WTO say no. It is irresponsive. 1 the net benefit is off the Betsy plank, which is the ban part. 2 even if the amendment is rejected, they'll reinterpret it regardless as direction for future action. 3 they say yes. Unit for Middle East countries adopted by the TRIPS agreement increasing engage. In China with Russia see the receive benefit from TRIPS developed and compartments embrace higher IP as countries improved countries achieve pursuing developed countries support their pursuing IP local countries the gap will drastically reduce. Go back to sui generis. Stretching existing legal categories to cover new areas causes explosions of litigations through uncertainty. Sui generis patents solves only in freely 90. Commentators agree that some of the precedents required to fail on one copyright patents are at trade unique characteristics demand sui generis solution as courts experience with IP law. They're increasingly contorted becoming slightly insulted the field. The protection within present constraint will be possible solution of litigation in the field. Demonstrating mistake placing the definition within copyright laws by separate category petition uncertainty could be eliminated.
The card he read is just a 2NC dog.
Betsy, sui generis.
Organized flows.
Say that again.
T. Charming Betsy, sui generis.
Okay.
No limits offense, those examples need literature and Pam's key arguments. Future A, B, and 10 cannot be something compatible because no one seriously has lit on that, and it loses the prizes plus core clog. We linked her to subject matter, puts more applications for core clog, which is what they said we need. The app does not create new rights, they existed before. This definition not new, which is what the 2 and C said on this. They existed pre-Alex, which means that we're not inventing anything. Counterinterpretation strengthening includes acquisition, predictability, outweighs turns against rights, but no one can actualize it. No one can prep in the first place. They make both sides of being impossible because people think that patent eligibility is topical. This is proven because people still read para under the status quo. They don't guide it. Then everything else is proven. No community consensus. 1, it's unauthorized, which is stumped, and 2, it's unknowable. In the first place, you should default to what is legally predictable limits. Stuff is wrong. Our interpretation is best because it's most legally predictable. Mandel uses all IPR protections, and their interpretation is just someone who's writing a blog post. The functional limits are good. They don't must have some IP go to defend econ advantages, and you have impact terms regardless. Functional limits, which I think have to great because the alpha doesn't get terms, and you get the core IP bad. This has like core clog. Term Betsy. Permanency of the plan inside Charming Betsy as a justification. This is not severance nor intrinsic. We can do it under domestic law because we do it the plan. We can still do this because it doesn't violate I law, which also serves as a check. It's also a function of the counterpart that we can permute separately because they feel that something must be, that the Charming Betsy must be cited as a justification, which is sufficient. No impact to the harmonization. We can do answers if they explain it. Trump thumbs goes both ways. It tariffs the any trade rule and price production of public goods. Permutation to the counterpart domestic includes international high goods. Domestic constitute adjudicated counterpart include treaties of executive agreements, international law. After treaties counterparts kill off deficits by blurring the line between domestic and international agreements that makes being often possible to get other process counterpart for other words and condo which solves their offense functional limits. They get every DA because we have to be in U.S. courts, treaties, and I allow provide new DA ground that link the offense also solved by advantage counterparts and are domestically thumbs. The also fiat doing apply domestically is part of part 2. We don't have to limit its definition because the counterpart also fiats domestic law as a function of the second one. International DAs are granted. We have lawyers too, which is done above. The certainty counterpart, this down argument is uncertain. The argument was made insufficient on the other flows, which means we can easily cross-apply. Trump's fintech number 1 fan, White House 25. As Trump promote U.S. leadership in fintech, as the policy of American administration support the responsible growth and use of technology across all sectors of the economy, promoting autonomy of the United States, promoting regulatory certainty and certainty built on technology, universal regulation frameworks that account for emerging technologies for smart decision making, one time judicial regulatory boundaries. The card is definitely about overall investment. It doesn't assume app solvency as well, especially with the app internal links. He has yet to touch business method patents or financial patents in a bad way, which proves that the app at the worst, it doesn't their stuff doesn't apply to the app specifically. Regardless, it's also priced in. No investors now because patent law is uncertain. The plan generates certainty and provides investors a guarantee that their patents would not be invalidated in the first place. There's no offense, not inevitable to launch it because short term the counterpart still kills investment. Common law is bad. This is all the stuff that I'm going to extend on recent years. Counterpart, no treaties. Trump dumps because he doesn't care about treaties at all, and it's uncertain. Hammocky 20. So I see how I won't read this card because everything I did above is sufficient. Past treaties don't assume no follow on. One person is enough to say no. Younger countries do not want anything to do with increased IPR because the enforcement costs are too high. In Russia and China have no incentives or regional actors to try to incentivize them to do it in the first place. They have to when that they want to. Case also solves because roll off terms and models they drop case solvency, which proves that it is sufficient. Sui generis. Permutation to both is not mutually exclusive. Will permute a separate area which solves core clog because they can still create a sui generis. Think now confusion that applies back to the counterpart. The plan solves certainty by stabilizing law. There's no monopolies. Most fintech is by solve companies, which is distinction that they do not grapple with. Reject all the software cards. 1, not about business methods, even if partially related. Business methods are hardware too. 2 are cards from 23. It's more recent. Takes out their offense, which will be below. There's also openness. 20 evidence is not disclosure submission now because no patents and uncertainty are evident in the status quo. Only the app can solve. Court splits don't apply because copyrights don't cover business method. Patents are link terms below are sufficient. Burma specific to finance regulation is sufficient. Burn your scenario is about all of them. Whenever a card fails, one card both leads about a more recent case. These two, even if it's right, people recognize that it's been done in the past and failed, so wouldn't trust it. 3, it still doesn't apply to fintech, which is sufficient. Certainty is key. 1, process any deviation from bright light rules of very approaches causes lots of complex and destabilizing. Congressional action is most predictable, widespread, and common for practice. 2, clarity. These simple rules are prerequisite for investment. 1 is the evidence is that only patents can solve because uncertainty exists now. There's no application, no investment. 3, empirics past sweeteners have failed. And 4, the Trumps of cross apply from above. They do care about the label because the label determines the protection, and none of them and they care about whether they will get the protection in the first place. Sporting is not relevant to any part of the case. They don't have a uniqueness. Argument confusion is wrong. Metal doesn't assume that the plan only applies to the Alice framework, and the rest of the stuff or evidence says that it also reduces cases because Section 101 is being used as a challenge just now in court. Non-unique. The 1AC does not say a full argument. 2NC said it. We can answer say patents. 25 examiners being high backlog on examiner plan application all-time high results. Rush fees filed to exceed 1.2 million. Drop offers for secretary examiners withdrawn. B. All course. Good catch 25. Others withdrawn. They're going back up 2.5 million cases pending. Taking as a result. C. District courts. Now 24 courts. Played by overwhelming multi-year backlog. Typical results of these courses. 700 key pending cases. Average time filing 76%. Average time criminal cases for 29.9 months. They don't get the card because the one is also a rebuttal. No turns case. The litigants know that they'll lose. They won't risk infringement. It's solved by the status quo. Backlogs are high, and the problem isn't infringement. Lack of patents killing R&D. We solve the investment internal, which always and enough is sufficient. The app's not about pairs. It seems to cards about software patents. The plan is business method patents, which is specific to fintech. App also doesn't change. Eligibility is in general, and the plan doesn't apply to those areas. Also, the app only the app solves rule of law, and every single other scenario they dropped on case, which impact trends and means that we solve the democracy internal as well.
We have we'll use 130, so we have 330. Starting now. order is the sui generis counterplane, the Betsy counterplane. Yeah, that's it. Sui generis Betsy.
No cards, I assume? No cards?
Oh, no cards.
Yeah, we're
Sure, if you get. No worries.
Let's do it.
Not extending a single terminal impact recognizing the case of deficit with the high risk account by solves case makes it an easy negative ballot. Try or die to preserve democracy. They consider the one the evidence that says that American democratic collapse means that Russia and China will trigger revisionist powers and only the American green lighting can solve. Conceded to its argument that it turns rule of law, which is the only even impact name you got out of the 1 AR. Now that declining American democracy means that everyone thinks of us as Russia 2.0, which means that the American legitimacy fails. This means it's try or die, and only the side that best acts as democracy they can solve it. They have no warrant for why being able to solve rule of law will up to broader democracy, because our core argument is about court legitimacy as well as its allocation of speed. They have not made any arguments for why the affirmative is able to faster handle digital processing or faster handle rule of law, which this is a non-zero. Now, at the top, I'll answer permutation. They do both. One, they can't just, quote, create for copyright. They've dropped that the entire point of its sui generis protection is that it's flexible and it's independent because it's not just patents or copyright, but a blend of two. They've conceded that if it's overlapping, it would be so confusing that it turns the entirety of the uncertainty deficit and means that it definitely fails. That's a Samuelson card. They have zero permutation or zero card explaining how the permutation would be looking. So you're here heavily negative and they have zero explanation for how it solves the net benefit. Next argument is the deficit. Now, framing issue at the very top is that not a single card that were extended by name since sui generis fails. Our software cards are definitely far more applicable and better than theirs. Look, I'm going to explain this, and I know you understand this well because you cut this file. The entire way that sui generis works is that section 101 works is that it is exempting Alice Mayo-based tests. The entire point of the counterplan is that it does not undermine the Alice Mayo test, but rather provide sui generis protection undermined by those who the Alice Mayo test invalidated. Now, I'm going to extend our pieces of evidence because they're far better and contextualized. The issue here is the 1 AR is making one-line tag extensions, and the thing that they blow up on the 2 AR does not answer our broader thesis about the counterplan being far more certain. One is that they've conceded empirics. The Schuler evidence says that it's been used for databases, biotechnology, design technology, etc. across the United States and European Union. Even if software technology is not exactly quote-unquote financial sector, that does not matter. They've not contextualized it in internal link differential for why for why business method uncertainty is uniquely distinct from things that software sui generis does not have. But if anything, it proves it to be effective because the entirety of the 1AC's authors are talking about the ability to patent financial technology with software, which is exactly what our counterplan cards do. Second is they've conceded the straight turn on this argument. They've dropped the 2 piece of diver evidence that says that adopting for software is far more superior because they've conceded the warrant about lawyers. This is far better than anything they've read. They've conceded the fact that patents are extremely overworking and long time, which makes it hard for people to be able to get patents in the financial sector. This turns the entirety of the case because it means that the counterplan is far more certain since it's far more easier for lawyers who are trying to prosecute patents to defend it. This now, I'll answer their specific warrants. They say certainty key because of congressional action. What the hell? The counterplan? It would obviously be Congress too. There's no reason for it to be the court. Second argument is clarity. We are definitely ahead on clarity. They have no reason for why the counterplan would be quote seen as easy or quote not simple, especially when they've conceded that it's been empirically thumped. The last argument is empirics did not set a single example of why sui generis has failed, which means you cannot give them this deficit. Finally, they've conceded that the sui generis protection is, or actually I'll answer that lower. Fourth is that Trump makes uncertainty inevitable. The owner did a lot of grandstanding, but didn't meet the burdens of the order established. They have no evidence that the investor confidence in a patent matters. They have evidence the investor sentiment broadly matters, but not in a discrete process of the case. The entire economy is uncertain, don't just doing stupid things, shares are being flip-flopped on, and interest are uncertain. That's the biggest evidence. Trump loves the plan is irresponsive because that doesn't automatically mean that investors will be happy, but they say that he doesn't do anything with patents. That's our point now, since patents don't matter to certainty. They say priced in, no course substantiate this, and the nature of record economic instability is that cannot be priced in. Also, they've conceded that now the core clause net benefit does not really matter because they've conceded an independent turns case 1. Drop that sui generis protection that eliminates court splits, which destroys rule of law. This was dropped, which means that we access net benefit even if we don't which clog, which I'll go do so now. The clog DA. Framing issue at the top is they have zero offense to explain why the counterplan, to explain why they access or reduce court clog, which means that any risk of a link is sufficient. The top argument about uniquenesses are all non-zero. If one, you should strike it off. The 2AC literally said the words non-unique. Justifying it in the 1 AR was such a sad tragedy, you do not get an answer to a new disad, even if the counterplan was modified. The disad was entirely complete. 2 is that they've conceded the fact that it's linear, even if there is some risk of court clog increasing now in status quo, that is not sufficient, because our 1AC evidence is specific to the wide masses of exploration. Link controls uniqueness. Uniqueness is inherently indeterministic, and their evidence does not say that court clogs are at all-time high, but if anything, they'll be able to manage it right now, which is proven by the fact that pilots are still working. The Quinn evidence says that the applications are at an all-time high, not that they're being able to go past it. The Gutierrez evidence just says that others are joining the backlog. That doesn't matter, and even if it takes years, district court is not responsive. It's about the Supreme Court. Now, the main link I would need to extend is the jettisoning Alex causes floodgates link. Drop the bullet piece of evidence that says that any application of Section 101 makes sure that people are going to be able to exploit loopholes. This is doubled by the Crocker evidence, which is dropped from the 2NC. Conceded the fact that people are more and more willing to test the boundaries of what patent protection looks like in the world of the counterplan, because they will do whatever it takes to make sure that they can get protection, especially when you're not undermining the Alice Mayo test immediately. Now, if they win on unique, it equally kills the case because they've conceded the Turns case warrant. Clord clock obviously destroys the entirety of the case because it means that people are not able to patent litigate, which means that at best it cuts both ways. I know the link analysis was done in the 2 hour was short, but they've not made any offensive arguments, and it's try or die when we're running such a large risk of the counterplan solving. The Charming Betsy counterplan, kick it, we're not going for it, but we've straight turned their impacts. They have not extended terminal impacts, but nay.
Okay, how much? 243. Okay, 243.
The order is going to be the sui generis counterplan. Is anybody not ready?
Not ready.
Gotcha. You are now?
I am not.
Oh, not bad.
that way to insert in the Constitution, conceding the premise of the entire advantage negates the need for the one to extend it by name. That would skew the affirmative. For the negatives, lazy debating. It's certainly faster. Democracy is a slow structural impact, whereas our evidence I talk about, like the Middle East primed to explode now over it, that turns the disadvantaged thirsty countries who refuse to follow any democratic norms are far more likely to aggress. That's faster because democracy is a slow, linear impact. It requires decline first to occur in the United States, and for that to model globally, those now autocratic countries would then have to choose to go to war with each other, which is much, much faster than countries getting thirsty and seeing water in another country. They just go to war over it. That's certainly faster and escalates faster. The fact that the concession of the affirmative's internal links, it lowers the bar for any of our, also lowers the bar for a deficit. You're starting the affirmative solves all of it, and the inability for the counterplan to solve any of it is a reason you should be highly suspect of the ability to solve a very fast, very significant impact. Dropping out of every scenario also means you should hold them to doing impact calc and turns case analysis for every single scenario. It's reciprocal. If you don't want to answer them, then because they're extending the counterplan, then they should also have to contextualize the net benefit. This is obviously true, obviously fair, and to vote otherwise without the tune or even justifying this would be obviously farcical. Certainty deficit is absolutely necessary for the plan. Any amount of deviation from the past, especially creating a new regime, collapses investment in financial technology. Every single 180 scenario is at 100, so you deficit must outweigh, especially since we only have an external impact in this debate. First is process. Procedural changes are bad. It cannot be clearer than this. Our card is about regulation in the context of financial innovation, that regulators in this sector specifically require durable past laws. Second is clarity. Must be easy, predictable, and accessible. It is obviously not simple because the US has had Alice Mail for the past 10 years. It never had a broad sui generis protection to replace pads. Only pads that can create legal stability for investing conditions. That's sufficient. One is the evidence lists this uncertainty, impacts it out, and says fintech pads are key. And our two is the evidence is very, very clear. Non hardline or no uncertainty. Three is empirics. We link turn this morning, especially when the 2R dropped. Every single indictment that 1AR had, our evidence from 2023, assumed the most recent sui generis attempt and said that it absolutely sucked. No one knew how to enforce it. It was unregulated and generated massive uncertainty. That alone is enough. Most large-scale pieces of evidence in the real-world process sui generis rights are far too alien for people to assume. There are new evidence from 2008, which means that you should obviously prefer ours. Yes, it matters because this turn case is about software patents. Business method patents are listed in the plan and to state software patents are only software. Business method patents are about a method and also require some hardware. We don't justify all business method patents either. Only a subset applying to finance. That means their certainty is far worse than ours because only we have specific cards about two subsets specified in the plan. If it's true that a carve-out is unprecedented, only prefer the ones with solvency advocates for why it would be certain. The counterplan does not undermine Alice Mail, is irrelevant because the plan does not affect the frame overall. Only carving out exemptions for business method patents or solvency advocate gives an example of the plan contrary to the plan is able to do. No course was because it's about software patents, which was above the Trump stuff. They just straight up dropped the card that the one I read on. This is fantastic. It's directly from the horse's mouth. It says that his explicit policy of his administration is to ensure as much certainty in financial technologies as possible and to incentivize innovation. Hell, he says that certainty is necessary. I do not know how much clearer you can get than this. In a one-liner in the 2R certainly does not get the job done on this. That means we have uniqueness with the deficit, and they're unable to do anything. Pern do cleaned up the residual lawyers and circuit split stuff that they extended. If it's true that it's so much more preferable, they would just get sui generis in the world of the permutation. That would solve all of them because it means that they would just go to circuits that aren't split and the lawyers would not have to spend their time on patents. If it's true, then nobody would get protection with the affirmative. It's not confusing. This is disproved because their evidence says that software can be patents or copyrights now, and the fact that that has still allowed people to copyright software means that it's completely irrelevant for the purposes of the counterplan. They're appealing to Latin, and it doesn't make any sense when we have real world examples that prove all their solvency. The disadvantage itself makes literally zero sense. It's premised on affecting section 0. It's premised on the plan affecting section 101, where we have never made the argument about it. The link is certainly zero. The entire 2R isn't even about eligibility in the area of the plan. It's about changing the Alice Mail framework overall. That is absolutely zero. And default to the fact that this is so tiny. The plan doesn't do that. Our explanation has been that the court does absolutely nothing in the world of the plan from 1AC cross-examination. It simply changes how business method and financial technology patents work, which is completely distinct. It was a completely distinct idea. The idea that this would have any effect on litigation is complete spin. If anything, sui generis would be far worse. But even if they win this, there's a link to it. The 2R just straight up dropped this. No doing work for them because we have link defense, but they don't to us. This is also a non-unique argument because section 101 is being used in the real world challenges. At best, the plan could rein back. You either think the plan doesn't affect it at all, or if we do, then we rated in even more court regulation. This is the card that the Tracy Reynolds and the one I explicitly extended the claim. I'm not sure what you can even do for them at this point. Also, uniqueness is only we have arguments in 2025. This is true on multiple levels. First is district courts. Obviously, SCOTUS only here's a few cases. It is a backlog. The last time I heard a patent case was so long ago. They're just said it's certainly about district court. Just read their cards. Second is patents. Those litigation filings have increased. Only we have issue specific uniqueness, which you should default to us. Three is courts in general. That's all increased because justices literally don't have anything to solve any of this backlog. Fourth, there's 800,000 cases, which is just a general number, which is way better than their zero statistics cited in the first place.
It's not new because the one in our Reddit didn't
This isn't new because of 1NR Reddit knew. Regardless, they also dropped the 1NR. She didn't even get it in the first place because it's a rebuttal. The implication of this is that even if you don't give it to us, then you shouldn't give it to them either. That means that they read a disad without uniqueness, reject it into linear because we're waiting the direction of the link regardless, even if they control uniqueness. But uniqueness controls the link. It makes no sense if courts are clogged now for it to have any more impact. They've made an argument. They made an argument about there's a break in a decreasing democracy, which certainly should be triggered now.
Y'all are making card notes, right?
Yeah, I already sent them over.
After card docs then.
Sorry, Bellarmine, you want me to look at the second one?
Yeah. The second one had the right counterpoint text, and I didn't
Okay, thanks.
get that note.
What's your card on business methods or software? If you have one.
Oh, it's the last card in the one you see, I think. Or, let me double check. Yeah, it's should be the last card, and I'll copy paste the section in the second card. Let me see. I think it's there too.
Okay, that's Fazio and
Nimitz.
Nimitz. Okay.
Oh yeah, it should be Fazio. That's the important.
Okay. Thanks. extremely good debate. Really, really well done. I ended up voting neg. The problem, like, it all ultimately came down to the certainty deficit. I'll get into detail about that in a second, but first, the net benefit. The 1AR says that the 1NR does not get to read a uniqueness argument, and the 2NR drops that. I agree that I'm not listening to the 1NR's card, but that also means I'm not listening to your 1AR cards, because those are justified only on the basis that they are responding to the 1NR card, so I'm kind of just zapping the uniqueness debate and stipulating to the idea that they have not introduced a uniqueness argument for their thing. The problem, though, is that they kind of were always explaining their argument as linear, and that does make it very difficult for them to win any net benefit of consequence if, obviously, you win a significant solvency deficit. But for reasons I'll get to in a second, I don't think that they do that. I think that the direction of the link is neg if the counterplan solves the case, because I understood this link turn argument to actually be a certainty advantage turns litigation argument, like it was explained as unclear boundaries about section 101 means that there is litigation about those boundaries, and that to me stemmed from the idea that there isn't clarity about what is the scope of coverage in the in the SQO, which is something that the plan solves by clarifying that the scope of coverage is broader. But if the counterplan solves that and also creates certainty about the scope of coverage, that would seem to resolve that argument for litigation. So, is there a certainty deficit? Cards on both sides are reasonable. This is so close to being effectively debated by everybody, but not quite. And the reason is just there's a lot of throwing around of our cards, basically what ultimately ended up hurting you is that you have way better cards than your new process bad debating is applying. You really should be describing mechanically what is different about the process of the counterplan. I do think that there are things to say about this. Conceptually, the actual problem with sui generis is that you have to figure out what scheme covers your invention. It's somebody who is filing a lawsuit about the covered business methods would have to choose at the outset of their litigation, am I suing under the counterplan sui generis scheme or am I suing under the Patent Act? That's not something that would have to happen under your AF, because your AF just expands the right, that's the kind of uncertainty that your cards about the European database right, for example, are talking about. But I just don't think that new regime uncertain gets you as much as those cards are describing. Number one, the software versus hardware thing, I don't know how right you are about this or how important it is. You never explain why this distinction means that their cards don't apply. Your cards in the 1AC are a lot about software. They point this out. I'm kind of left unsure what to exactly do with this. If you had a much more specific card that was software is different and here's why that matters, maybe this is okay, but Fazio says what are the things that are business method patents. Your Nimitz card that you also point me to actually just says that business method patents are mostly made of software. Every example that I could find in your 1AC seemed like it was about software, so I'm not really sure what to do with that argument. The normal process key argument, in my mind, gets significantly dinged by the Trump uncertainty thumper. Your uncertainty bad cards are actually fairly precise on patent uncertainty bad, but I thought that your debating was much more describing deviation from normal standards creates uncertainty about expected revenue, and they established this link in the cross-ex, and they called that out in the speech. To me, that makes it difficult for you to insulate this from broader economic decline creates uncertainty about revenue and undermines long-term investor confidence. And also they're making arguments about how Doge means that irregular process is the norm. People are completely unsure how the administration is making policy. You've read a card that is the Trump administration really likes fintech and would like to create uncertainty. That to me is a different question than are they succeeding in doing that, and they have a bunch of cards that are both for the outcome reason and for the process reason, there's not a lot of regularity in the process. And so to me that kind of, if there's two different parts to the uncertainty impact, and one part is about regular process and the other part is about clarity, consistency, and predictability of outcome. In my mind, the regular process part significantly thumped by that debating. So then I'm thinking about, is the counter plan different from the plan in terms of clarity of outcome? Because this is something that is obviously linear. I'm not viewing uncertainty as a yes/no thing where if they thump a little bit of uncertainty, that takes out the case. But the problem is that I think that they do much better explaining why clarity and certainty of outcome is solved by the counter plan. They have cards that are it's the same level of protection. They like name it explicitly. There's no fuzziness about the boundaries because similarly to the plan, it is done by Congress, and so Congress can lay out exactly what is and isn't covered. Your cards are about the EU database rights, but then they have cards that are like the terms and concepts that were in the actual statute that laid out the EU database right are the cause of the uncertainty in that context, and that is remedied by having clarity in the terms, which in the overview of the certainty deficit, they explain that because the counterplan uses the same terms and objects of protection as the legislation that is passed by the plan, it would be hard for me to explain how that would be different. The 2AR includes a few lines about how since the AF is Congress, that solves the link. To me, that is on the right track, but that is way too late. The 2AC does not make that set of arguments that's like connected to, just like, I can talk about 2AC strategy in a second. And then last, circuit splitting / rule of law link thing, it would be impossible for me to figure out based on the debating on both sides whether or not this is solved by the perm. So I didn't decide that and wanted to see if I could decide without that. I would be really at a loss if I had to figure that out because you all didn't explain why it would be, like why it would link, and you all didn't explain why the perm would cheat. I didn't super understand how this was a distinct theme. So yeah, that's kind of where I landed. Like pretty small net, like linear democracy net benefit terminal. There's a part of the certainty deficit that is pretty thumped by Trump, and the other part of the certainty deficit is solved by the counterplan.
If those explanations that you said earlier about like how just completely new right people would be so confused because they don't know what scheme it covers, if we did that explanation, would that have made the certainty deficit stronger to that way?
It's hard to say. I imagine they probably would have read a different selection of solvency cards if that was the argument. Like, part of the problem here is, like, given how you've explained your AF, like, and this is the real problem with the neg strategy, is, like, their counterplan isn't really different than your AF. Because you and the cross-ex earlier were like, the AF is probably Congress. So if the AF, like, if what we're really doing here is Congress is showing up and like saying that this change happens, like their cards about distorting broader doctrine are clearly about the court reaching a different determination about the Section 101 like standard and rule, and then if the court were to say like for no reason business method patents and fintech are covered, then it's pretty natural for me to assume that like some other litigant will be like, okay, well for some reason these are covered, why not these? That to me was the much stronger angle of attack, and you could have expressed that either as normal means as Congress or the counterplan apparently fiats that Congress is an actor, so we can permute the Congress actor part of the counterplan even though it's unstated and guarantee that that solves the link. You could explain the AF as essentially being a sui generis form of protection within the umbrella of patent law, so it's like internal to patent law, there is a specification that in this place, patent law is applied differently. There are cards about all of those things. There's like historical examples of that being done with copyright, like technological subsectors where the term of copyright protection is different, for instance. All of that to me was much cleaner than trying to say their counterplan is really bad. Because their counterplan is like almost exactly the way that you explained your plan earlier in the cross-ex. Does that make sense?
Should we have gone for two counterplan?
Probably not do counterplan, because like sui generis does by default mean not patent, but like the things that made the counterplan avoid the net benefit were not that it is sui generis. The things that made the counterplan avoid the net benefit were that it used a different actor and that it passed a law that changed the standard without setting precedent. And then the links to the net benefit that you would make is, okay, well, to the extent that your argument is just purely, like, not a court argument, but like a political argument that other industries would seek industrial protectionism as a result of congressional protection being expanded, which would have to be the link to the plan, that link clearly also applies to the counterplan. But we didn't really get into, like, it was critically important to the arguments in this debate who the actors of each counterplan and like who the agent of the counterplan was, who the agent of the plan was, what they say as they make their decision, and like just none of that got hashed out and was like that was, those facts are vital to determining the answer to all of these deficit and solvency and competition questions, which is why this was kind of tricky.
given that none of the sex list is really in the 1AR, is there a winning 2AR? And like, what does it sound like?
Yeah, I think like those explanations are in your cards, so I don't think that a lot of that would be.
Maybe we get the explanation in the 2AR, like referring to the cards, like quoting shit.
I don't know exactly what I would have done in this particular situation. The 1AR definitely was like, given that you're going for a certainty strategy, the 1AR was pretty light on the link to certainty. So like, I don't know. I would have had to think a while about it. I did think that the 1AR time allocation was probably too much on Betsy. That one seemed like it was going way worse for them.
Should it have just been competition like the two cards on that seat?
I thought that their block to counterplan then plan was complete ass. I think that I would have literally just gone to that page, said the certainty impact debating that I'm going to do on the other page applies here, and then move on. They literally just said it's functionally intrinsic, adds delay, intrinsicness kills DAs. Like, that's nothing. They don't even have like the normal, they don't have any reason why the plan has to be immediate.
So, to be clear, given that like that shot was just kind of the articulation of the certainty depths that you've described, trying to ground it as much as possible in the cards that we've read, given that like yeah, they do describe that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, given the evolution of the stuff that happened here, I think that like in the bigger picture, the better way to debate this counterplan is that like, is it actually true that you're AF is Congress? Like, do you have cards that say that the AF is Congress?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Secret in the Dropbox, man.
Well, like I didn't read your 1AC in detail.
Yeah.
The cards that I've read definitely do not clearly say Congress.
Yeah. Okay. And then also like.
But the reason that's important is like that determines what deficits you're going to make to sui generis, because you're either saying like, you're either basically saying label key, or you're making an argument about the appropriate agent / mechanism.
Yeah.
And that those two ACs look pretty different.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, okay, and the other answer, or the other explanation for sui generis certainty link, other than you have to determine the boundaries of the protection, is you have to invent all the doctrines from scratch. Like, the thing that, the bill that is passed by the plan doesn't restate the entirety of patent law. Like, there are decades and decades of judicially developed patent precedents that explain, like, what kind of evidence do you need to bring for infringement? Is it first to file? Is it first to, I don't remember what the other one is, like, all sorts of stuff that, like, courts have been saying about patents for forever. Like, what are the jurisdictional rules? Like, does the precedent in the Heartland case about, like, you have to file in the place where you live, and, like, that court is the only one that can listen to your arguments, like, does that apply to the context of the counterplan? It's clear for the plan. Obviously, the plan's bill doesn't restate all of those things, because that's all just, like, assumed by the fact that it's in patent law. But under the counterplan, all of those questions have to be hashed out from scratch. Like, does this, like, which of these doctrines apply? How long is the term of protection? The plan doesn't have to say, because patent law already says. But under the counterplan, like, what is the term of protection there? Like, that's the other certainty explanation that you could do if you were to choose that route, and that would be the justification for patent label key that is not connected to the actor.
And given the thing you were saying about uniqueness, did that help or hurt us or just no change? At the very beginning of the decision, like the card, like the 1R uniqueness card.
It probably wouldn't. I just started there because I started there.
Yeah.
I don't think it would ultimately have mattered if you got those arguments, because the linearity thing made it so that wouldn't have zeroed the DA. Obviously, you would have wanted enormous mitigation to the DA as a result, but
makes sense. Yeah.
I also like. I don't. You want to extend your case in the 1AR. I understand why this happened, and I wasn't. I put a star next to this because if I decided that you won on all the other counts, I was gonna go back and think about do you just get to not say the word water in the 1AR and then make that your entire 2AR? I don't that would have been a really shitty decision for me to give, and obviously they didn't instruct me to do that. Really, I mean they kind of did. You probably were right. I don't know. I would have had to think about that, and it would have sucked. So one reason is to avoid that possibility. So just why but like more importantly, you want to describe your case in a way that is the most favorable for your deficit. Like the point of case debating in the world in which there's a neg counterplan is not to win that there's a big impact to the case. It is to spin your impact and describe your impact in such a way that it optimally lines up with what you're saying the counterplan doesn't accomplish.
Yeah.
So like either way, you really should have those components and the 1AR and 2AR.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. No 2AR and a straight community.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's it for us.
Just two quick questions. One, like going back, or actually no, just also from the tuner. Do you think that like should I have consolidated to spend less time on the counterplan portion and more time on the net benefit? Because I feel like
No, I don't think that you would have won a big risk of the net benefit no matter how much time you spent on it. And
Okay.
so from like a maximizing paths to victory
Yeah.
sense, I think it was more logical for you to make the net benefit not zero and then spend most of your time talking about the counterplan.
makes sense.
And then